You've got a man, a fort, and a national anthem. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? Well, the real connection between them isn't what you think. It's actually the story of a forgotten founder who made one of America's most famous moments possible.
So, let's jump right into the action. The year is 1814. The United States has been at war with Great Britain for over 2 years now. And the British, who just finished defeating Napoleon in Europe, have now turned their full, undivided attention to America. And their next target? The thriving port city of Baltimore. I want you to just picture this scene. You've got 16 of the most powerful warships in the world, and they're all forming a line right outside Baltimore Harbor. And what are they facing? A single, lonely American fort. And then they just open fire. It's a terrifying, completely overwhelming display of naval power.
And this wasn't some quick little attack. No. The bombardment lasted for 25 grueling hours. All day and all through the night, bombs and rockets just rained down on the American defenders. The intensity of it is, well, it's almost impossible to imagine.
Okay, so this is the part of the story we all kind of know, right? There's a lawyer, Francis Scott Key, watching this whole thing from a ship out in the harbor. And when the sun finally comes up through all the smoke and the mist, he's just straining to see if the fort surrendered. And then he sees it. The American flag, it's still there. That single sight inspires him to write down the words to a poem, which, of course, would later become the Star-Spangled Banner. So we all know the song, but let's pause for a second. What about the fort itself? You know, the place that took that 25-hour beating and saved Baltimore? Why was it named Fort McHenry? I mean, who exactly was McHenry? And that's the real story we're diving into here. Because to really understand the flag, you have to understand the fort. And to understand the fort, well, you have to understand the man it was named for. So this is James McHenry, and his story is, well, it's pretty remarkable. He was an Irish immigrant who became a physician, then a soldier in the Revolutionary War, and ultimately a statesman who really helped shape the new nation. McHenry's whole journey is just this fantastic example of the kind of opportunity that existed in early America. He didn't start out in politics at all. He started in medicine, but his path would, pretty quickly, lead him to the absolute highest levels of government. Just look at this climb. It's incredibly fast. He gets to America from Ireland in 1771. Just 5 years later, boom, he's a surgeon in the Continental Army. By 1778, he's so respected, he becomes a trusted aide to George Washington himself. Yeah, that George Washington. And then, less than a decade after that, he's in Philadelphia, putting his own name on the United States Constitution. And here's the proof that he was a big deal. This is the official document from Maryland appointing him as a delegate to the Federal Convention. This wasn't some minor role. He was a key player, chosen to represent his state in the creation of the entire government.
But it was his next job that would really seal his legacy and connect him directly to that fort in Baltimore. In 1796, President Washington appointed him Secretary of War.
Now, at the time, the U.S. was in a really tough spot. After the French Revolution, France started attacking American merchant ships. It created this crisis that we now call the Quasi-War. The young American nation was really vulnerable, its ships were being robbed at sea, and, well, something had to be done. And James McHenry was the perfect guy for the job. As Secretary of War, he didn't just manage the military, he basically built it. He talked Congress into creating a professional standing army, he grew the Navy, and this is the most important part for our story, he launched a massive project to build new forts all along America's vulnerable coastline.
And that brings us right back to Baltimore, because part of his national defense strategy was to build a brand new, state-of-the-art, star-shaped fort to guard the city's harbor. They started building it in 1798, and it was named in his honor, Fort McHenry.
So now you see it, right? All the pieces just click together. The fort that survived that crazy bombardment in 1814 wasn't just named after him by chance. It existed because of him. And this is the connection. You have James McHenry, the man who had the foresight to build up the nation's defenses, and the flag flying over the very fort that he commissioned. Without McHenry's work, that fort might not have been strong enough to survive the attack. And that flag, the flag that inspired the national anthem, it might never have been there to see it dawn.
You know, I think this quote just sums him up perfectly. McHenry isn't famous like Washington or Adams, but he was there, right in the middle of everything. He was a dedicated public servant whose work turned out to be absolutely critical at one of the biggest turning points in American history. A man who didn't just participate in great events, he enabled a truly great moment.
And that really leaves you with a question, doesn't it?
History tends to focus on a handful of huge, towering figures. But how many other people like James McHenry, the diligent architects, the organizers, played these essential but now forgotten roles in building the nation? It really makes you wonder what other stories are just hiding in plain sight, waiting to be explained.